WPIAL Blitz Show. Bruce Badgley here, Ian McMeans. We're a couple minutes late, but oops, let me turn my Bruce Badgley here. Monitoring my sound here on
Yeah.
my phone here. Looks like we've got the sound, and it looks
Yeah.
like we've got some very interesting events that led to the delay tonight, Ian.
I have a few children, and one of which is a baby that was born in January. So he's still a baby and does baby things. And, you know, sometimes that happens. And, sometimes you get spat up on right before you're going to do a podcast and have to go change your clothes before you come on. So it's all good. It's all part of life. It happens. This is a family show. That's why we do the show at 9:30. So theoretically, my kids are in bed, but, baby was up a little late tonight, but it's all good. We're here. We're talking high school football. Hopefully everybody had a good Labor Day weekend. And now, we're into September, 2 games in the books already, which is kind of
Wow.
surprising, but now it's nose to the grindstone time and to really get rolling with the regular season.
Yeah, and I guess question for you too this year. I mean, obviously, one of the things that we put out every year are our rankings.
Hmm.
I guess after 3 weeks, I guess we should at least dip our toe in the water on who we think the teams are. And now, are we doing those like 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A, 6A? Or are we doing those big school, small school? How did you want to do that this year?
Good question. I think I'm open either way. Either big school, small school. We've done that in the past, or I think last year we might have done 5A, 6A, 3A, 4A, and 2A, 1A. So either way is good. I did look back at last year. We did start doing our rankings in week 3. Well, third game after the third
Yeah,
game, basically.
after the third game.
Week 2 after the third game because we start in week 0. So yeah, but yep, next week we'll have our first set of rankings for the year. I think that'll be good. Have 3 games under our belts and really start to be able to kind of analyze some of these teams a little bit more because now you've got teams that have played a couple games above their classification. It might be 1-1 or 0-2 versus teams that have played, teams below their classification that might be 2-0. Kind of hard to do an apples to apples comparison with those teams. So the more games we get in the book, the better it'll be.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, after the third game of the season, that's when I think, the true colors of a team, start to, emerge. Team chemistry, that's going to take a little bit of while. But from, being able to determine who the good teams are and who the best teams are, that's really the determining factor when you get, into these rankings is, yeah, there's quite a few good teams after that, but who are the best teams? And that's what these rankings, what we try and at least, point the fans towards.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really the key is when we're looking across multiple classifications, right? If you're saying, okay, 5A and 6A together, well, Central Catholic just went out and beat Pine Richland, who's the defending 5A champions. So, that gives you a little bit of point of comparison. Pine Richland will play North Allegheny later in the season too. So, but then Peters Township's playing really good ball right now. They just beat,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes. I mean, I guess we'll get into that. So why don't we
yes.
get started?
All right, let's talk about it. So, welcome to this week's edition of the WPIAL Blitz Show. This is, I guess, week 2, but episode 3 of the show because we had the season preview show as
Yeah.
well as the one before week 1. So now this is the before week 2 edition of the show. So if you're watching, you've obviously found us on YouTube. You can also find us on social media as well as my WPIAL standings page and WPIAL Games of the Week articles on SteelCityBlitz.com.
Yeah, and I think that this year we're gonna, obviously try a few different things too. We've done a million different things, and I guess one of the things for me that I'd like to request from the show, even though I'm part of the show, is one of the things that you did that I love is Panic Button. Maybe after
Yes.
week 3, maybe we have our first edition of Panic Button.
I think we will. Yes, I think we'll have some teams next week that will talk about whether or not we're ready to push the panic button on them yet or not. So it's we, like you said at the beginning, right? We're only 2 weeks in, so let's get a third game under our belts, and not only will we start to separate the wheat from the chaff with the good versus the great teams, but on the other end, it's like, whoa, are we ready to push the panic button on this team yet? So,
Yeah, and especially too since like league play hasn't begun, which is
correct.
for the WPIAL, it means everything. If a team didn't really start to push the panic button after week one, in let's just say in the Mid Penn Commonwealth, where they have 9 league games and all 10 count toward power rankings,
Hmm.
then it's a completely different situation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That these these are essentially functionally preseason games,
Right.
though the WPIAL can take them into account when they're determining wild cards. And we'll talk a little
Yep.
bit about that because last year there were some of these early season games that the WPIAL did take into consideration when they were selecting the last couple wild cards for the playoffs. So
Sure.
for
Sure.
some teams, they could be meaningful, which is definitely worth noting. So our
Yep.
big results this past weekend. Central Catholic beating Pine Richland. This game just got off to a barn burner start. Both teams returned their opening kickoffs for touchdowns. So it was 7-7 before you even knew how to blink.
I don't think I've
And
ever seen. I've never been a part of a game
yeah,
that each team returned their the kickoff for a touchdown to start a game. I don't recall that. I've never been involved in it. I'm sure it's happened before, but not in any game I've ever been involved in.
yeah. So this was a wild one. And it was 21-20 at halftime. It seemed like every time in the first half that Pine Richland scored, Central had an answer right back. Central scored with under a minute to go in the first half to retake the lead. And then in the second half, Central's defensive line really turned it on. And Pine Richland, who has some good players on their offensive line, just couldn't block them. And Pine Richland has arguably two of the best receivers in the WPIAL, and they just couldn't get the ball to him because their quarterback had no time. Aaron Strader's a really good quarterback, but they had probably 6 or 7 snaps that were bad snaps, bad exchanges from the center back to the quarterback, and he just had no time, couldn't even get the ball out to his playmakers. And Central added in 2 touchdowns in the second half to kind of pull away, win the game 34-20. So nice bounce back win for Central Catholic. Kind of started to find a rhythm offensively with Roman Thompson at running back. So, we talked last week about Central needing to find their way after that loss to LaSalle, and I think they certainly did in the second half against Pine Richland. So this was a very good win for Central Catholic, and this is a Central team like we've talked about before. They're going to get better as the season goes on, right? They didn't bring back a lot of skill position starters. The starters they brought back were in the trenches, and that's a good centerpiece to build around. But you have to build that chemistry with the quarterback, the receivers, the running backs, the skill position guys. So as they build that chemistry, this team's going to get better and better as the season goes on. And Pine Richland, smoked the team from Ohio in week 0, now lost to the defending 6A champs. I'm not ready to push the panic button on them yet. This is they'll be just fine.
um, do you think Central Catholic was was under pressure to win this game because Pine Richland has had their number lately?
They have. Yeah, this was the first time in like 5 years that Central beat Pine Richland. So this has been a bit of a rivalry going back to when Pine Richland played in 6A. And uh, I'm not going to claim to have any inside information as far as what's going to happen with realignment coming in the fall. I will just say that Pine Richland is a booming area where a lot of new housing developments are being built. So it's very possible that their student population grows a little bit and they move back up from 5A to 6A in the next cycle. So I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but I'm just saying that like when you look around at where new houses are being built, it's Mars, it's Pine Richland, it's the Cranberry area, which is Seneca Valley, which they're already in 6A. It's South Fayette, which just moved up to 5A back in I think 2020. So the Peters Township's got some new stuff being built. So those are the areas where you're like, okay, these are the teams that might be, moving up a little bit. We've got new housing developments being built.
Yeah, but I think the thing that benefits Central Catholic this year, Coach Lehmeyer was already on the program.
Hmm. That's true. I think he got the WPIAL Blitz show bump.
Okay.
Yeah. So the other big win, Steel Valley taking on Washington. This was a big game in 2A just because of how wide open 2A is across the board. Both these teams were playoff teams last year. Washington had kind of a down season last year, but they brought back a lot of starters. Steel Valley returns probably the best individual player in Duron Barksdale in all of 2A in the WPIAL. So I think this was a good win to try and figure out, like we talked about, like who's the great team versus the good team in 2A. And I think Steel Valley separated themselves as potentially putting themselves in that great team conversation and putting themselves in position to potentially contend for a number one seed as we get, further in towards the playoffs as well.
Sure, sure.
So our games of the week, two of them went to overtime, one of them being Latrobe and Plum, which went to three overtimes. And it's just, anytime you have to play three overtimes, that gets wild. And then Chartiers Valley was down. They were down 14-0 at halftime, stormed back in the second half to tie the game at 21. West Allegheny scored first in overtime. Chartiers Valley scored and then went for two in the win and converted it and beat West Allegheny for the first time in a long time. I don't remember what the exact number was, but it was the first time in a long time. Actually, hold on. I had it up here. First time Chartiers Valley beats West Allegheny in 16 years. So
Wow.
some of those kids on the team weren't even alive the last time Char Valley beat
But they're
West
not, they
Allegheny.
haven't played consistently over that 16 years, right? With all the realignment and
Um,
everything. I mean,
they've been they've been pretty close because both of them have kind of bounced between 4A and 5A, and
right.
they're neighboring school districts, so they've usually played each other in non-conference play. So they may not have played each other every single year, but they've played a lot over that
Uh-huh.
time span.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the other game of the week, the one I thought was going to be a barn burner that was wound up being a defensive struggle. Mars came back against Bethel Park. Mars was down 10-3, scored to tie it at 10. Bethel kicked a field goal with about 2 minutes left to go up 13-10, and then Mars marched it all the way down the field and scored a 2-yard rushing touchdown in the waning seconds to win 17-13. So in a game between teams that both put up a ton of points in week 0, they were in a defensive struggle in week 1, but I think this proves that Mars is one of the top 4A teams, is able to contend with the Bethel Park team that's a very solid 5A team. So it
Sure.
speaks very well to both programs. Very good programs play good programs. So this was a good game between two of them.
Absolutely.
The upset of the week, I don't know if I want to call it a massive upset, but California beating Cornell in 1A. California has been kind of the cream of the crop in the Tri-County South, which is, as you know, kind of always um, the redheaded stepchild of 1A, that those teams in the Tri-County South never get seeded very well. They're kind of lucky if they win one playoff game between four teams in a given year. And California has been very consistent over the last decade. Always in contention for the conference title. They won a playoff game last year. They were the only Tri-County South team to do it. But Cornell's been a really strong program that had a Division I recruit in their backfield. And for California to go out and beat Cornell really speaks highly to what California has on their team this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think put some respect on the name of the Tri-County South, that they went out and beat a very good Cornell program that made it to the quarterfinals last year, but Cornell gave uh Cornell gave Fort Cherry everything they could handle in their quarterfinal matchup. So that's a very strong Cornell team that California went out and beat.
Yeah, and the noteworthy results there. I
Yeah.
mean, Avonworth. I mean, here they come again.
Yeah, yeah, they brought back pretty much their whole team that lost in overtime in the state championship game. And that's a big result to me because I thought West Mifflin was a team that could potentially contend for a wild card spot in
Mm-hmm.
3A, and we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. But Avonworth showing their head and shoulders better once again. And then Aliquippa Bell Vernon, this was a game that got basically postponed slash canceled last year. They played about 2 snaps before lightning caused them to call the game. And last year it would have been a matchup of defending state champions when they were supposed to play, but they didn't, or the game never finished, I guess. And then this year, They went down to Bell Vernon, played the game, and Mike Warfield back on the sidelines now for Aliquippa. And even though Aliquippa lost a bunch of players to transfers and graduation, the Quips do what the Quips do and went out and beat Bell Vernon. So this is also noteworthy for Bell Vernon, their first game of the post Matt Humbert era. So I think that's a good one to keep an eye on too in 4A, just because only 8 teams make the playoffs there. So there's going to be a lot of battles for contention of those last couple playoff spots.
You have
And
a couple other. I want to ask you a couple questions on some, and I don't know
yeah,
if you're looking at any more teams besides this slide, but because I don't get a chance because we don't review that. It's
yeah,
like gut reaction here on
yeah.
this show with me. But McKeesport being shut out uh, by Peters 35-0. I mean, that was surprising to me. Not for anything other than the margin of victory. What were your thoughts?
So I'll say that I'm not surprised Peters won, and McKeesport's star running back Keemon Spell, who was our player of the week last week, did not play in this game. He tweaked his ankle late in that week 0 game, and
Mm-hmm.
because this game didn't matter for McKeesport towards their playoff contention, they held him out for
Mm-hmm.
precautionary reasons. They're like,
Sure.
why? McKeesport's a 4A team. They're playing the defending runners up in 5A who have a very loaded, defensive line that just dominated that game. So McKeesport made the decision to just rest Keemon Spell for the week. And,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was injured,
Fair
right? So
enough.
I'm not, he needed the recovery time as well. Like, I'm sure if he had been fully healthy, he would have gone out and played. But
Mm-hmm.
to me,
McKeesport just reinforced my this premise of like, what do these games really mean?
yeah. Yeah. So to me, it doesn't raise a huge red flag for McKeesport because their best player wasn't playing. Now, if he starts to miss more games into the season, that could start to raise a red flag if the injury lingers for a while. But so we'll see how things progress the next couple weeks.
A couple more games.
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson handling Central Valley again.
Yeah. Central Valley got up 14-0 early in that game, and then TJ scored the next 37
They
points
just got
unanswered.
angry.
Yeah, yeah. TJ did what TJ does, right? And this was one, Central Valley's a 3A team playing against Thomas Jefferson, who's the defending 4A champs. So it's a tough schedule. The WPIAL did not do Central Valley any favors with this schedule. I think Central Valley will be just fine eventually, like they were last year once they get into playing their own classification. But they have a just brutal stretch, and we will talk about them a little bit later in the show too.
Okay.
But there,
And,
it's just a brutal stretch for Central Valley to start the season.
and I thought Woodland Hills' win over Penn Hills was impressive.
Yeah, that definitely
Sorry to
was.
catch you in the.
Oh, that's okay. No, we're all good. That was yeah, very impressive win by Woodland Hills. I would start to be a little bit concerned about Penn Hills at this point. They got shut out in week 1 and were being shut out this week, or sorry, they were shut out in week 0 and were being shut out until they scored a fourth quarter touchdown against Woodland Hills. So 7 points in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I would start to be a little bit concerned about Penn
Well,
Hills offense.
that's obviously a team on the nomination of panic button time, right?
Yeah, it's going to depend on how things play out this week for Penn Hills, but I think they're definitely in contention to be discussed next week as far as the do we press the panic button on this team yet.
Okay, you're in control, my man.
All right, here we go. So we have co-players of the week this week.
Woo!
Yeah, there's 2 of them because of what they did. So
Wow.
if uh if you want to add things up here, Javon Johnston, the sophomore quarterback from Shadyside Academy, accounted for 8 total touchdowns. And then Tim Andrassy from Leechburg accounted for 7 total touchdowns. And I've always said that if you score 6 touchdowns, I'll show your highlights on the show. Well, we had one kid score 8 and one kid score 7. So I'm not going to
Eight
pick between them.
eight touchdowns. That's incredible.
Yeah. Eight.
I mean, who are the, I mean, I get who did Shady Side play?
They played Burl, who's not real good, but
Yeah,
still,
I get that, but
still to put
man,
up 56 points on anybody, four passing touchdowns, four
you
rushing
would think
touchdowns.
that you would think they'd at least put somebody on to shadow him after four.
Well, the good news is that I've got some highlights here thanks to
Ooh,
Huddle,
okay,
so
even better.
we can go through them. So this is Javon Johnston just running through Burrell's defense for his first touchdown, running through them again for the second, connecting on a deep ball for the third, right
That was
over
a
the
good
defensive
pass.
back. Little swing pass here and some attitude at the end from the receiver. Another short pass that just keeps things rolling. Some highlights on the defensive side of the ball, too.
I can't understand. Well, and I don't know if you like copied this over earlier, net, but only 21 views of an 8 touchdown performance. I mean, come on, shame on everybody. You should be watching all this guy's highlights.
I will. I'll have to tweet all these huddle links out because,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. That's an amazing performance.
yeah. And then the other. Here's another deep ball that goes for 6. Kind of missed that one in the corner of the screen. This one just tucking it, taking off, finishing, and at that point the route is on. So we can flip over now to the highlights for oh, there's an ad playing. All right, we'll go back to this one while the ad plays on that one. But I had this all queued up and ready to go, and then it's like, oh no, we want to show you an ad. So I'll hold on. I'll stop sharing for a second there while you know we are not sponsored by Adobe Photoshop. So
No, we are not.
but that said, if Adobe Photoshop or anyone else would like to sponsor the show,
Yes,
we're totally open to
absolutely.
that. All right, so here we go. Tim Anderson from Leechburg. He uh returned a kickoff for a touchdown, and also, actually, you know what? This is not the right one because this is from February of this year. So I'm sorry, that's not the right highlight. Um, so that would have been his game against Best Center last year. I looked at his huddle
Wow,
page and I was like, oh, Best Center, this one just happened. So I know the
that's all right.
Leechburg.
Everybody knows he had a great performance.
He had I can hold on. The Leechburg Twitter account for their team posted his highlights. I'll just go there. So
Okay.
yeah. Once again, thought I was prepared for this, and then things happen.
Hey, that's why we do this live. Actually,
That's why we do this live.
the reason we do it live is so fans can interact with the show. And so look, the live chat is open on YouTube for anybody who has questions, comments. Like I said, that's the reason we do the show live and also on YouTube so that the fans can interact with us. Look, there aren't any other podcasts that are getting that offer fans an opportunity to interact. So that's why
Yep.
we do this.
Here we go. So he did return the opening kickoff for a touchdown as well. That was an 89-yard return. But then the rest of the night was all about Timmy Anderson running behind Leechburg's offensive line and just bulldozing his way through the defense and
Wow.
just running all over Beth Center to the tune of 310 yards,
Look
six
at that
touchdowns.
three. Look at that formation with the tight end, that big eye with the tight end up front. I love it.
Yep. And just turned in a workhorse performance overall. Just a great night. Seven total touchdowns. I remember following this on Twitter. The Leechburg Ball account does a great job of updating on everything happening around Leechburg football, as well as live updates during the game, which I feel like
Hmm.
when you can find those accounts that give you live updates during the games, that's so helpful as a fan, trying to follow along with what's happening
Sure
in
is.
games and everything else, especially when you're like me trying to follow everything at once. It's very, very helpful. So, congratulations to our co-players of the week this week
I can see
getting,
how you had a
yeah,
difficult time.
yeah, yeah. And then, oh, you know what? I forgot to put Javon Johnson's on this slide, but that's okay. We all know he scored 8 touchdowns. So some other big performances this week. James Armstrong, awesome name, quarterback from Hopewell, four total touchdowns. They were all on the ground, but over 300 yards of total offense. Tyler Eber from Thomas Jefferson, 221 yards and 4 touchdowns in that win over Central Valley. Robert Lindsay, the quarterback from South Park. Last year, he did mostly a lot of handing off, a little bit of a dual threat option last year when South Park won the WPIAL title, but they had a workhorse running back last year, whereas Lindsay's now become the focal point of the South Park offensive attack. So he put up 4 total touchdowns as well. They started to throw the ball a bit more this year after they were just a ground and pound team last year. Drew Ross, the quarterback from Freeport, 4 total touchdowns, 2 of them through the air, 1 on the ground, and a pick 6 on defense. And then Aiden Wright from South Fayette returned 2 kicks for touchdowns, which, I
Wow.
always like to throw someone in on these like top performances that did something really unique. And like returning 2 kicks in a game for a touchdown is definitely a unique one.
That's definitely noteworthy.
Yes. All right. So congratulations to all of our top performers. Moving on to our streak watch. So those that had either big winning or losing streaks. As we know, the Whippeal did not win any state championships last year, unfortunately. So Carmichael's ended last season on a 3-game winning streak, but did not make the playoffs. So they carried in the longest winning
Wow.
streak in the Whippeal, and they won this week. So they now have a 4-game winning streak as the longest active winning streak in the Whippeal. So congratulations to Carmichael's. On the other side, all of the teams with active losing streaks all lost, and most of them lost fairly significantly. So those streaks will all continue. The other note is our defending WPIAL champs were 5-1 in that should say week 1 instead of week 0. The only loss was Pine Richland losing to Central Catholic, which was a matchup of defending champions. So someone was going to lose that one. All the other ones won. And then Fort Cherry won their 30th straight game against a WPIAL opponent. So the only teams to beat Fort Cherry have been when they've gotten into the state tournament the last 2 years.
Or if Matt Sieg wasn't the quarterback.
Oh no, because he had to play a few games at running back last year.
Oh,
When
okay.
he broke a bone in his hand, so he had to play a few games at running back last year, and they still won those games. So they've been very, very good overall altogether. 30 straight games against Whitfield competition's incredible.
It
That's
is.
two straight undefeated seasons, plus the Whitfield playoffs both years, and
Yeah, it
then
is.
2 games this year. All right, so just as a reminder, as we now move from week 1 to week 2, once again we have non-conference games for all of the teams. They games are scheduled by the WPIAL, so week 0 teams got to schedule their own opponents. Now and moving forward, all these games are scheduled by the WPIAL, and then starting the following week in week 3 is when the teams that either have 7 or 8 teams in their conference will start conference play, and then teams that are in conferences of 6 teams will have 2 more weeks of non-conference play. So for the most part, this is the last week where everyone will play a non-conference game. After this, we'll start to get into conference play and the things that really matter towards playoff qualification. So our week 2 games of the week, the biggest one is
Wow.
not even taking place in Pennsylvania, which is kind of hard to believe. This is part of the Hall of Fame showcase in Canton, Ohio. Woodland Hills taking on Central Catholic, which what a great matchup, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about tough opponents to start the season. Central Catholic has played LaSalle College Prep out of Philadelphia, played Pine Richland, who is the defending 5A WPIAL champs, and now has to go to Canton, Ohio and play Woodland Hills, who's off to a roaring start to this
Yeah.
season, too, right? And for Woodland Hills, it hasn't been easy either. Woodland Hills played oh wait, sorry, Woodland Hills should be 1-1 on here because they lost to North Allegheny in week 0. But
Right.
that
That
was a
right. In
game that
a close one.
a close one that came down to the wire where their star receiver Scoop Smith had the ball in his hands with no time left and made it 65 yards when he needed 70 to win the game. But Woodland Hills played a 6A team in North Allegheny, then played Penn Hills last week. So Woodland Hills, and Central Catholic, this is a great matchup of two very strong teams taking place in Ohio, in Canton, at the Hall of Fame field. So that's pretty cool that those players get to go play there. The other big one
Yeah.
locally is Thomas Jefferson taking on McKeesport. So, the big story here will be whether or not Keemon Spell plays for McKeesport. And this is a matchup of last year's WPIAL title game as well. So, kind of a measuring stick game for these two teams to say, okay, who's kind of deserving of that number one ranking in 4A between TJ and McKeesport. I'm not going to raise a fuss over McKeesport losing to a really, really good 5A team in Peters Township, but this one's a very good measuring stick game for both of these teams to see how they stack up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Avonworth taking on Aliquippa. This is the defending 3A WPIAL champs in Avonworth traveling to Aliquippa to play against the Mike Warfield-led Quips. So this should be a really good one. This, I think, is really important for both of these teams to see how they stack up. They're not in the same classification, but it's two good teams taking on each other, so it's definitely noteworthy. And Avonworth brought back almost their whole team from the one that went to the state title game last year. Aliquippa lost in the semifinals last year, which ended that streak of 16 consecutive WPIAL championship game appearances. And, they've got some young players trying to find their way, taking on a veteran team. So we'll see how it goes. Big matchup, non-conference matchup in 5A between Penn Trafford and Moon. Both of them off to 2-0 starts. Both of them should, I think, be comfortably into the playoffs. But I think this is a big matchup as far as like playoff seeding goes. That if, Penn Trafford winds up being the second best team in the Big East Conference behind Woodland Hills, and then Moon finishes somewhere in the pack in the Allegheny Six Conference. I mean, Moon's a really good team, and they've got a brutal schedule that they've got to go through once they get into conference play. Peters Township, Upper St. Clair, Bethel Park, South Fayette. I mean, in Moon, all five of those teams made the playoffs last year. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out. But I think this is a big one for playoff seeding and how teams get slotted in 5A. I said we'd talk about Central Valley again later. Schedule doesn't get any easier, right? They they had TJ last week, and now they have to play Bell Vernon. So I think this is a big game for both these teams. And I will say, whoever loses this game is going to be on our panic watch next week, and we're going to talk about whether or not we need to push the panic button on them, because one of these teams is going to be 0-3 between Bell Vernon and Central Valley. So I think
Yeah.
I think it's important to start talking about one of these two teams. The winner, it doesn't sink their season, right? Both of them still have conference play. They still have chances to get back in it. But just for the morale of getting on the right side of things,
Yeah.
Central
The
Valley's
margin of
0-2.
error is definitely shrunk. I mean,
Yeah.
if you start because of just what you've talked about, is that, it's now it's the perception that these teams are leaving with the committee when they come up with seedings for the postseason.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think for Bell Vernon too, being in the post Matt Humbert era, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Matt and everything he did there. But when you have a new head coach come in, getting that first win is always a good thing. So I think, Bell Vernon needs to establish that they still have that winning culture. And yes, Matt's still there as the athletic director, and his influence is throughout the whole school, not just the football program, but everything that happens down there. And Matt's a great guy, but I think on the field, for the confidence of the players out there, they need to get back on the winning side of things too.
Yep, they sure do.
Yep. In 3A, Freeport is off to a 2-0 start, which I'm not surprised by because I thought they would be a pretty good team this year. But Quaker Valley turning things around after a down year last year, getting off to an 0-2 start. I think Quaker
Down few
Valley's
years.
yeah, down a few years. I think Quaker Valley is one of the best stories of this young season, getting off to a 2-0 start here. So this is a nice non-conference matchup of two teams in 3A that are off to 2-0 starts, which is why it, definitely got on my radar. Laurel is a 1A team and just smoked Mohawk. I had them on the noteworthy results earlier because I thought Mohawk was one of the teams to beat in the 2A Midwestern Conference, And for Laurel, a 1A team, to go out and just smoke them was eye-opening to me. But now Laurel gets another Lawrence County opponent in Riverside, who's also a 2A team. So we'll see if Laurel can keep their hot streak going, or if Riverside, who's coming off a nice win, can keep their streak rolling too. So
Sure.
all those matchups between those Lawrence County programs, right? You have Newcastle, which is like the big program at the middle of Lawrence County, but then all around Newcastle, you have all these small little schools between Neshannock and Shenango and Riverside and Laurel and Mohawk. So they all don't like each other. Oh, and Union, they all don't like each other. So it's all rivalry games when these Lawrence County teams play each other. And I should give a shout out to the Lawrence County Sports Network. They do a great
Yes,
broadcasting
absolutely.
all those games up there. You
Do a
should
great
check
job
them
out
out.
there.
Yep. And then finally, Shadyside Academy against Clairton. This is another tough non-conference matchup. Shadyside Academy, as we saw, just smoked Burrell, put up 56 points on them with their quarterback scoring 8 touchdowns. So now they have to face a Clairton team, which is coming off a 79-0 victory over Sarah Catholic. I think Clairton was a little upset that they lost to Amani Christian in week 0 and took out some of their frustrations on Sarah Catholic. Which
Okay.
so you got two teams. Clairton just scored 79 and Shadyside just scored 56. But we'll see how the defenses work this week, because Clairton's
Wow.
defense is really, really good. So if Clairton can shut out Shadyside, I think that's a huge feather in their cap, because Amani Christian has a really good offense and Clairton held them to just 19 points. So we'll see what Clairton can do this week.
Yeah, see what happens.
All right. So since we're recording this on Tuesday, the
Yeah.
PennLive rankings are out. They come out on Tuesday morning. So usually on Monday when we record, we don't have the new rankings, but we have them this week. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to kind of talk through some things that have happened so far early in the season. So we obviously know about what happened with LaSalle beating Central Catholic, but then they went out and beat Malvern Prep, which is like an independent team. But I know you want to talk about that Harrisburg game, so I'll let you talk about that one.
Yeah, just Harrisburg really looks powerful. I guess the big takeaway out of that game is their Penn State recruit running back Messiah Mickens left the game in the first half, didn't return, and with an injury, and I can't really speculate. I know that everybody around the office today, I mean, was asking. We were banting around questions regarding that, but it could be an injury that's going to last a while. Harrisburg has a tough game at State College this week, so which quite honestly, that already has playoff implications. With the WPIAL, because of State College actually going west in the bracket, but yet in Harrisburg's conference, the Mid Penn Commonwealth, and that game in large part will go a long way in who's going to win that Mid Penn Commonwealth conference. But Harrisburg, as advertised, Michael Shank at quarterback, they've really found an answer there. I was very impressed with his passing in that game and all of his poise. So yeah, Harrisburg really tough, and some of the catches that Elias Koch makes. I mean, you just kind of throw it up there, and the guy comes down with it. It doesn't matter where on the field or how many guys are hanging on him. He'll catch that ball. I mean, just an amazing talent. So I guess that's all I got to say about that.
And I think the rest of the 6A rankings, only having two WPIAL teams, is probably about
Yeah.
right. No one else has really risen to that level yet, I would say. North Allegheny's been strong so far. Central Catholic's only loss was to LaSalle. I think the biggest surprise might be St. Joe's Prep being 0-2. Granted, they've played national schedule opponents, but I saw a headline that their loss this past week was one of the biggest in like the last decade that they had.
Right. Everybody's saying, like that's a team. Let's just say for me, and I consider having a pretty good knowledge of St. Joe Prep and what's going on there, whatever like that. You know what? I'm pressing the panic button. I mean, I don't have to wait till next week on panic button time or whatever like that with St. Joe Prep and my good buddy Tim Roken, the head coach there. I think that there's got to be a level of concern there with how they've lost their games because they've lost games, close games by mistakes, and they've lost other games by being blown out. And I'm hearing some things as well would lead me to believe that something's got to get righted with that ship. And the reason I say that even more so is that is, and you saw full well LaSalle College. I mean, and how they took it to, already to Central Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
and then come back and beat a really good Malvern Prep team last week. They really have somebody who's really tugging at their coattails to say that, hey, how about us? And that's LaSalle College. So St. Joe Prep, yeah, I don't think that anybody poo-pooing the fact that they've got work left, and they'll be fine. Boy, oh boy, that's I think that that it's a little bit tough there.
Yeah, and I think the surprising thing to me is, every time I think about St. Joe's Prep, I think about a team, that's structured and disciplined, right? And that they blew a 28-0 lead in week 0, granted against like a, nationally ranked team from
Doesn't
Florida.
matter.
But
Doesn't matter.
right, but and then last week, everything was about they committed so many penalties and so many mistakes and all that stuff. So I think you might be right about like they got to figure something out as far as like whatever's going wrong with just like the penalties and whether it's focus or discipline or whatever. I mean,
They're beating
I
themselves. The
right,
other teams aren't beating them, and
yeah,
that's why they've got to be concerned.
yeah, I think that's it. That they're making mistakes to beat themselves is where it is.
And that's very uncharacteristic for St. Joe
Right.
Prep.
Yeah, yes, you said it better than I did. It's uncharacteristic that they beat themselves. They usually don't do that. So on to 5A, a Philly Catholic League team and Roman Catholic once again tops the rankings. This will be a theme here in the PennLive rankings that PennLive thinks very highly of the Philly Catholic League teams, and as they should after what they did in the state championships last year. Pine Richland being in at number 2, Peters Township at number 3. I think that's about right with Pine Richland being the defending champs. Upper St. Clair coming in at number 6 and Woodland Hills at number 9. And I said this in our season preview show, and I'll say it again. Don't sleep on Moon because they're a very good team. So I think Moon was in the like next level of like teams to watch. So I'll ask you this because same question as St. Joe's Prep, but Bishop McDevitt being 0-2, is it time to press the panic button on them yet?
I wouldn't think so. Not in
Okay.
not in 5A. You know, I think Coach Wechter used the game that they lost against their opening weekend, that when they play somebody outside the borders of the United States or outside of Pennsylvania, it doesn't count against their power rankings. So, he was just using that really, I think, as a glorified scrimmage. Didn't really show a lot on film, but he sure let Sebastian Williams, they let the reins off last week. At quarterback, the new quarterback there taking over for Stone Saunders.
Hmm.
He showed me a lot last week. He made all the throws. He was under duress all game long. He made one bad decision on an interception. Other than that, I thought he played very well. I mean, it was only a 29-21 game that Harrisburg beat them. And so in no way, Bishop McDevitt, they're going to roll through. They've got they're probably their next toughest game is going to be against this state college team that Harrisburg is up against this week, and then I think that the rest of their conference schedule in the Mid Penn Commonwealth will be relatively will be W's.
That makes sense. And I think as far as the WPIAL teams here, these rankings are probably about they're how I would
Probably
rank
about
them. I
right for
I
what
would
you can
yeah.
see.
Yeah. I would have Pine Richland, Peters Township, Upper St. Clair, Woodland Hills, and then Moon would be my fifth team, you know.
But I
So
like I like what PennLive did, and the fact of what they did is they don't. I mean, you've got Pine Richland and Peters Township, District 7, multiple, but there's different teams from different sections there. I guess what PennLive is saying is that the class of 5A is the WPIAL between Pine
mhm.
Richland, Peters, and Upper St. Clair.
And
At the moment,
yeah, yeah,
and Woodland
absolutely.
Hills.
And Woodland Hills.
That 5A is going to go through the WPIAL champ. That is hard to argue, quite honestly. I would feel the same.
Yeah. And and I do feel like obviously the Philly Catholic League, Roman Catholic is kind of the powerhouse, but it's basically what these rankings are saying is it's almost going to be harder to win the WPIAL title for any of these teams than it's going to be to, you know, for a team for say Roman Catholic to get through the eastern half of the bracket to the state
Yeah,
title.
yeah, and we all know that. I mean, Exeter's coming. Whoever McDevitt, whoever comes out between Exeter and Bishop McDevitt, which, quite honestly, they're 1 and 1A in my view, in District 3 5A. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a couple of tough teams.
Yep. All right, on to 4A and 3A, where once again we have defending champions sitting at the top of the PennLive rankings. So, 4A, not a lot of love for the WPIAL here, which I do kind of understand after you know Thomas Jefferson lost to LS in the
What do
playoffs
you mean?
last
There's
year.
three
But
teams there.
yeah, but
Thomas
no,
Jefferson,
TJ's only
McGee's rocking
fifth. Like,
Aliquippa. Come on.
yeah,
A
TJ's
three
only
out of
fifth
10. I
though.
mean, that's
Yeah,
showing some love. Yeah.
a little
Oh,
bit, but I don't. I mean, I I know Bonner Prendy is good. But I mean I feel like if you put TJ on the field with anyone else in the top five other than Bonner Prendy, I feel like they could definitely hold their own. Like I've they brought back almost everyone from the team that won the WPIAL title last year. They could definitely compete with Southern Lehigh, Pope John Paul, and YO in my book. And I think McKeesport could as well. Aliquippa, honestly, like they won big over Bell Vernon. It was a really good win, but I they've only played one game so far, so I need to see a little more out of them before I, render a judgment on whether they're ranked right, ranked too low, ranked too high. I need to see them play more.
all I know, why I'm missing, we've as long as we've been doing this podcast, why I'm missing has been in the equation.
Yes.
3A, 4A, what have you. We've had Coach Wolfram on as a
Hmm.
guest. This might be their best team that they've had since we started doing this podcast. They are on a mission, uh, and just I mean, don't sell that team short at all. Incredible start that they've had, and just just awesome. Just they have got the complete package this year. Experience at quarterback, Justice Hardy, just a tremendous running back athlete, even maybe a better defender. Again, offensive line that is just opening up holes. So they did that. I mean, they made short work, quite honestly, of Southern Columbia on their home field. It doesn't matter whether Southern Columbia is up or down. When when you win on Southern Columbia's home field, you're doing something. And when you dominate, that's what people need to start taking notice. And that's what Wyomissing did.
True. And I'm not trying to sell any of these teams short. I think I'm trying to say that Thomas Jefferson's really good, right? That
Yeah, right.
TJ went out and beat a good Central Valley team, and just they were down 14-0 and just flipped the switch and scored 37 unanswered points. Tyler Eber ran for 221 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
That kid's just a workhorse back behind a strong offensive line, and they have one of the best coaches in the WPIAL. I mean, Bill Chirpek's won more WPIAL titles than any other head coach. So I think, even at that point, I'm biased, but I think TJ should be higher in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and number
And it,
10, Twin Valley,
yeah,
another good team. This was a team that was number one in the state in 4A last year before, losing a couple of tough conference games down the stretch. But, Wyomissing and Twin Valley will meet in the regular season. That's going to be a head knocker. Wow.
yeah, we'll be looking forward to that game. Moving on to 3A, we have some good WPIAL representation here with Avonworth at number 2, Amani Christian at 5, and then Elizabeth Forward and North Catholic closing out the rankings. Nice to see my alma mater getting some love after
Yeah.
they put up like 69 points against Knock this past week. North brought back the WPIAL's leading passer and Joey Filitsky, and they've started to play defense this year, which was their struggle last year was they couldn't stop anybody, but they can definitely score, and now they can play defense too. So I'm a little biased, but like I've talked about earlier in the show, Avonworth bringing back so much from the team that lost in the state finals last year to Northwestern Lehigh, and Amani brought back a lot too. That's a really talented team with
That's
a
a
lot of
really good
Division
team
One
there.
recruits there. So just getting out of the WPIAL is going to be incredibly difficult. And just to get to the state bracket, and then we'll see what happens because there's some other decent teams out there, right? Like Hickory from District 10 is good, and the two from District 11, or actually three teams from District 11 on here. So
Yeah, North
yeah,
Schuylkill. I mean, that could be your sleeper team there out of District 11 this year.
you think they're
Um,
better than Northwestern Lehigh though?
we'll find out. I mean, ask me a direct question. The direct answer is yes. I do believe that when it all shakes out, that I think that North Schuylkill is the one that's going to prevail there in District 11.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. That's
Bold statement, right? I can
bold
say that
statement.
week
Yes.
too.
You can say that week too. We'll see how it all goes. Yeah. All right, on to 2A and 1A, where speaking of the Schuylkills, Schuylkill
Schuylkill
Haven
Haven.
is the number one ranked team in 2A.
My
I
buddy
think,
Mike Farr, I'll tell you, they're incredible team there.
yeah,
What incredible talent.
yeah, and I know Troy's the defending champs. Obviously, Southern Columbia is still ranked, but I think across statewide, it's true in the WPIAL, and I think it's true statewide. 2A is the most wide open of any classification. Like I can't. Yes,
Absolutely right. Absolutely
South
right.
Park's the defending WPIAL champs, but they lost 4 of their 5 linemen, 3 of them that went to D1 schools. So like, yeah, they're off to a 2-0 start. South Park's a good team, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I can't definitively say South Park is the best WPIAL 2A team, right? Steel Valley's good. Steel Valley just beat Washington, who's a good team. I think Seton LaSalle might start to figure some things out here as the season goes on. And there's some other good 2A teams. So I just uh, South
Don't
Allegheny
rest
is
on
good.
Lancaster Catholic either. I
Yeah.
mean, so
So yeah, I think it's just totally wide open as far as who could win the WPIAL, 2A and the WPIAL, who could win 2A statewide.
yeah, and
All right.
1A, it's Fort Cherry is about a prohibitive favorite as you know I can remember in 1A, maybe since the Jeanette days. Um,
Probably, but don't sleep on Clairton. I mean, Clairton was a
yeah,
young team last year, and they bring back a lot from that squad that yeah, so I would say don't sleep on Clairton here.
and Port Allegheny just keeps on winning. I mean,
Yeah.
what a great story, about, with District 9 and District 10, and, how in these lower classifications, they've really represented themselves so well in the postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And Westinghouse out of the Pittsburgh City League, don't sleep on them either. Although Bishop Guilfoyle being the defending state champs, probably will have something to say once state playoff time rolls around as well.
Yeah, right. They seem to like win state titles in bunches, don't they?
They do. They do. Yep. And I mean, I think they're one of the only Catholic schools around the Altoona area. So for people that want to send their kids to Catholic school or, whatever else, they're able to draw from that whole Altoona region.
Yeah.
All right, so coming up this week, broadcast from our friends of the show, the KDKA News Radio team will be broadcasting the Avonworth at Aliquippa game, and our friends at WMBS out of Uniontown will have a matchup of undefeated teams between Laurel Highlands and Southmoreland. Southmoreland off to a 2-0 start with new head coach Dustin Shaw, who was the WPIAL's leading rusher at York like 5 years ago, is now the youngest head coach in the WPIAL. So he's got them off to a 2-0 start. And Laurel Highlands' new head coach used to coach at Southmoreland. So a little bit of history involving these two programs as well. So our WPIAL look back, thanks to our friends at PA Football History, the mid 1930s this week was part of
Wow.
the dynasty era in all three classifications. In the early 30s, the WPIAL moved to three classes, which was B, A, and double A at that time. So in double A, which was the biggest one, North Braddock Scott won their third straight title. And they would go on to win a couple more as well in that decade. And then McKees Rocks won the first of their back-to-back Class A titles, and Glassport tied Cumberland Township 6-6 in the Class B championship game after also winning the championship in 1932 and 34. So
Those are some pretty rough pictures in that newspaper there. Those guys. I wouldn't want to
yeah,
mess with those guys.
uh,
Uh,
you know, there were some gritty players back in the day. I mean, there still are, but
yeah.
yeah, when
Yeah.
when when you were growing up in a coal mining town, it was a little bit different.
Yeah.
So, and this was before overtime, became a thing in the 1980s. So if teams tied in the championship game, it was just a tie and they were co-champions. So, Glassport and Cumberland both claim a championship from 1935.
No hockey famine in Pittsburgh. Interesting, whatever that means.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to zoom in on that and see if I can get more of that story.
Yeah,
So,
right. Hockey
uh,
famine?
yeah. All right. So for those of us or those of you who enjoy listening to us talk, um, Bruce and I do a couple other shows as well. So you can check out the Steel City Blitz podcast, which I'm a part of. It airs on Thursday nights on YouTube. So this week on the SCB podcast, we will be doing our season preview and predicting, who we think are going to win all the divisions, all that stuff. Everything Steelers based, we will cover along with some drinking, some swearing, some jokes, all that stuff. It's a good time. So if you like
Some
Steelers
reviews
football,
of brew pubs, huh?
yeah,
Right.
it's a little more of an adult show than this one is, but so be forewarned if you tune in. But it's a good time if you're into Steelers content. And then Bruce, your Fresh Set of Down show is Tuesday nights, right? Was it a double dip night
Yeah,
tonight for you?
Tuesdays. No, we've been on a hiatus here. In fact, I might throw some fresh set of downs highlights in the back end of the show next week until we get things going on fresh set of downs. So just that, having that, we got that Eastern flavor this year or this week just by talking about the state rankings and stuff like that. So we might throw a fresh set of downs page of some of the hot games and hot teams to watch
Yeah,
here beginning next week. So
yeah, sounds good. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. You obviously know where to find us on YouTube. You can check us out on social media and all of my coverage of WPIAL standings, WPIAL games of the week, all that at steelcityblitz.com. So thanks
yeah,
everyone
Ian.
for
Hey, listen,
joining us.
thanks for toughing it out, man. Between the spit up from your
From the
child
baby.
and having to get up early tomorrow, man. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
No, it's all good. Happy to talk high school football. And, this is almost like the calm before the storm is how I feel about this coming week, right? Like we've got a couple
Yep.
good matchups, but the storm is coming of conference play and all that we're going to get into as the season rolls on. So this week two that's coming up here, week two with the third games is like the calm before the storm. So
Yeah,
it'll
I'm
be good
already looking
games.
forward to Panic Button next week.
Yeah, we'll talk panic button and we'll do a few more things. So it'll be a good time.
All right, we got to keep it fresh. So anyway, hey, listen, for my buddy Ian, hey, I am Bruce Badgley. Listen, thanks so much for joining us. here on the WPIAL Blitz Show. We're back next week, Monday at 9:30, our regular time. So see you then, everybody.